Welcome to Pressure Points. Our topic is Google earnings. And as of this recording, which is about 30 minutes after the conference call ended, shares of Google are up about 6%. They entered the conference call up around 5%. And it was good news on top of good news. And I'll start with what I think is the most important good news, which was related to search. And search revenue was up 14.5% year over year. That compares to a whisper number of plus 13%. The imprint number, if you care, was plus 12%. That is an acceleration from 11.7% growth in the June quarter and 10% in the March quarter. So we've seen search growth go from 10% to call it 12 to almost 15%. And this, of course, comes at the narrative that generative AI is having a negative impact on what's going on with their search business. And the opposite is happening. And at the most simple level, what's happening is people are starting to get a sense that more of their questions can be answered. And when people think about answering questions, they typically think about Google. And so when those of us who are very deep into AI. I always think about things like Gemini and GPT and Grok as kind of the go-to, but the vast majority of people are starting to realize that there are better ways to get answers out there, and they're going to Google for that, and they're finding ways to monetize that. So they call this an expansionary. Sundar at the end of the call called it an expansionary moment in search, which I think really kind of sums up how they think about this. They had accelerating queries, importantly, in the September quarter compared to the June quarter. They said paid click inquiries were up 7% year over year. Each of those were. And so all of this increased enthusiasm from users is having a positive impact on search. I want to continue on the search theme for a second and mention that this topic about them navigating it is far from over. Is right now they're juggling 4 different search surfaces when it comes to the user experience. They have search, you have AI overviews, AI mode, and Gemini. And so when you typically will go to do a Google search, you're getting the top three of those will in some capacity be thrown at you. And they recognize, Sundar talked about this towards the end of the call, recognize that that's suboptimal and that they need to simplify what that experience looks like. We've written in the past about them starting to move to more of a unified experience. So it sounds like we're probably a couple years away from that. There also was a question in the call related to the impact of agentic AI in commerce. And the idea is that 20% of Google searches are monetized, but if you start to use agents more, like, for example, Atlas and the new OpenAI browser that has agentic built into it, you have an opportunity to just tell the machine, go and find me the cheapest X, Y, and Z as that you can find that's the highest quality, and it just goes and does it. And so that is another example. This whole concept of agentic commerce is something that is, like, to say it's nascent is the understatement of the night. And that is something, another variation that they're going to have to navigate. But at the highest level, again, they're doing a great job of capturing this enthusiasm and parlaying this moment into higher search growth. The other A topic, of course, is related to what's happening in Google Cloud. I mentioned they had mentioned on a previous pod, they had accelerating growth. It was 33.5% year-over-year growth. They had done 31.5% in the June quarter. The street was looking for just under 30%. So nice surprise there. And again, they are accelerating off of higher numbers. And they talked about being capacity constrained through the end of next year, in the December quarter and through the end of next year. And so from a big picture perspective, that is positive for everything that's going on in cloud. Third, I want to just mention what they're talking about with CapEx. They did guide CapEx essentially for this year to be about 7% higher than what they had talked about 3 months ago. So it was a pretty modest increase. You can basically flow that through to next year in terms of bringing the next year's numbers up, call it 7%. And that probably is going to get their CapEx next year, growing something like 20 or 25%. It will be well below what it looks to be Microsoft and Meta. I mean, Microsoft could be 50%, Meta could be 60, 70% CapEx growth. So it looks like Google they're all in, they're growing CapEx meaningfully, but maybe not at the same pace that we're seeing from Microsoft and Meta. I'm going to end with the toy department, which is Waymo. They have, before tonight's call, talked about expanding into London and more cities in the US. But kind of a fun thought came up through one of the questions, which was, can you take some of the personalization that we have around Google, knowing some of the things you like, where you live, can you add that to the in-car experience? And Sundar said that they will be starting to test things like that next year. And to me, it kind of jumped out as an example. First, I mean, they are all in on Waymo. It sounds like there's probably going to be some form of they didn't talk about this, but they got to eventually IPO this. And separately is probably an example, like this personalization is something that is an advantage to Waymo versus Robotaxi and their ability to kind of build a little bit of a different experience. We'll see how much really personalization you need in a car. I think at the end of the day, people just want it to be there and fast and cheap. But that is kind of a fun new topic related to the Waymo experience. On behalf of Pressure Points, I'm Gene. Bye for now.